Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Halva for the Heart, Dying and Grieving in Diaspora. Today's episode is all about playfulness in the grieving process, and how it's kind of an overlooked way to process your grief and to, I was going to say work with your grief, but you're not even working with, you're playing with it. And kind of instead of seeing grief as something to work with, I guess, something to play with. So yeah, that's what we're talking about today. And I'm going to be talking about some upcoming events I'm hosting that are related to this idea around playfulness. So stick around and enjoy the episode. So, grief and playfulness. There are not often words that you hear spoken in the same sentence. We do hear sometimes about grief and joy, but I would argue that that's a slightly different concept. This isn't really about joy. Well, there is joy involved, of course, but it's more about an active choice to change your relationship with grief towards a playful one. And truly letting your inner child lead the grieving process, the grieving relationship. The word process makes it sound like there's an end date. There's no end date, right? It's this relationship that you have with grief. Francis Weller's terminology of an apprenticeship with grief is something that I really resonate with. I have really resonated with. But lately I've been kind of turning it on its head, and instead of saying, well, I am learning from grief, always, of course, but also I can relate to it more as like a friend, not just a friend in the way that adults have friendships, but in the way that kids have friendships. So, what do I mean by that? You hear so much about like healing your inner child, right? And that inner child part of us is is the part that still holds on to wonder and naivety or naivete, however you pronounce it. Hold on to imagination, vulnerability, doesn't really feel concerned about shame or embarrassment, right? But as adults, we've been kind of shaped and transformed by society, capitalism, oppressive systems, other adults around us who make us feel like we have to intellectualize everything, but especially our grief, to analyze it and suppress it, make it tidy and presentable and get back to work, all those things. We're kind of told that we shouldn't cry too much, like there's a respectable amount of tears, but that sobbing or wailing is really just not allowed, and that your grief should be done by a certain date, right? And also that, like, even though on one end of the spectrum, wailing and sobbing isn't really seen as acceptable, laughing is also not acceptable, right? Like, you need to be a certain kind of sad. Somber is the respectable way to grieve. But children don't do that. That's not how children grieve, right? Children grieve by expressing whatever emotion is at the surface. There's no shame around, "Oh, I shouldn't feel this way," or, "Oh, I shouldn't cry right now," or whatever. They let their emotions speak, express whatever they're feeling in any given moment. And especially, they play. If you've ever been around grieving children, they'll jump back and forth between crying and playing at the drop of a hat. And there's a reason to that. I mean, first of all, that the emotions of grief come in waves. We know this. It's especially apparent in children when they're just raw with their emotions. You see the waves come and go, and it's not, I shouldn't even say come and go. It's not that the grief is just the crying. The grief is also the playing. So the emotions oscillate from one end of the spectrum to the other, randomly, quickly, unexpectedly. But that's how they're processing. Children often use play and especially like drawing or imagination to process their emotions that they can't put into words. But also, it's not even, I don't even like the way that that's phrased, because it's not that putting it into words is the right way to do it. Like, oh, if they were older, they would have the words for it, and that would be the right way to do it. No, words. I mean, I don't. Words are great, right? Words help us express ourselves, communicate with others. It's good. Words are good, but they're often not the most efficient, most effective, best way to express our emotions, because words are the output of the intellectualization process. And so if we're speaking in words, we've likely intellectualized what's happening, unless you're like speaking in poetry or something, right? So by expressing through play, through art, through imagination, you're kind of skipping over the intellectualization process, not putting into words, and allowing your body, your heart to find other ways to express and process your emotions. So, what do I mean when I say letting our inner child lead the grieving process? I mean, tapping into that childlike wonder and vulnerability and unabashed expression, without fear of like shame or embarrassment, and also the curiosity to play, to be playful with the grief. So instead of the relationship with the grief being an apprenticeship, maybe not instead of, in addition to, some days I feel like I'm in an apprenticeship with grief, and others lately I've been feeling like I'm on the playground. Like, me and my grief are like childhood BFFs. And they're like, hey, want to come over? We can, whatever. That's the energy I'm feeling with grief at the moment. And in the same way that like children will often like, tug at your clothes or like demand attention, I kind of feel grief's the same way, like it arises when you least expect it, sometimes when you expect it. It demands your attention whenever, at any given moment. And we can kind of see that as, it's often this idea of like, oh, it's like a wave that just knocks you over, or like a sinking hole you fall into or something. But what if it was just like you were a kid on the playground and there's another kid who wants to play with you, and they just like tug at your shirt and they're like, hey, I saw something cool. Come see. Well, what if that was grief? So I invite you to take a moment and just close your eyes, if it's safe to do so, and imagine that. Imagine you're just like back in your childhood home or playground or school. Let's say you're on the schoolyard and a friend comes over and they say, hey, do you want to come over after school? We can blank. What is this friend, this grief friend, what do they want to do with you? What do they invite you to do with them? They want to have a play date. What would you do on a play date with your grief? Lately, I've been finding my grief wants to dance. And partially because my mom loved to dance. And I've been putting on the music that she loved to dance to. And instead of, it's not unusual for me to turn on music that she liked and dance to it. It's very classic, nostalgic, 1970s Persian pop, right? It's music I grew up with. I love dancing to it. But there's a difference between, I've noticed in myself, there's a difference between me turning on that music and dancing to like spark this nostalgia in me, this grief, or to sometimes kind of just like keep my Persian dance moves fresh. Make sure I still know how to do it, know how to care, you know? And instead, lately, turning on the music and being like, hey, mommy, let's dance together. She was always the one dragging me on to the dance floor as a kid. And as I got older, I was like, no, 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 I can't. So instead, like seeing her inviting me out to the dance floor and saying yes to that. And I feel the difference in my body as I'm dancing when I approach it from that place. As a, yeah, let's dance together. Let's turn on a really fun pop song and dance together. There's this joy that bubbles from within, and also this like goofiness, the silliness. And that's just fun. So I'm curious, what did your grief friend say to you? What are they inviting you over for a play date to do? Maybe your grief friend also wants to dance with you. Maybe they want to draw a picture with you. Maybe they want to play an imaginative game with you, you know, like playing house like we were kids. I'll be the sister, you be the mom, whatever. What's the imaginative character? Maybe there's a, you know, imaginary monster or your superheroes. I don't know. What's the story? What's the curiosity making you wonder about? And how can you invite that like lighthearted, playful laughter into that grief process? If you try this, I would love to hear how it goes for you. You can send me an email at misha@hafizdeathcare.com or send me an Instagram DM at hafiz.death.care, or you can send me a voice note at the website voicenote.hafizdeathcare.com. I'll link it all in the show notes. Yeah, I'm really curious. I've noticed in myself that my relationship to grief has felt much less heavy, much less painful, and kind of just like a special friend I carry around with me who wants to hang out sometimes, who tugs at my sleeve and is like, hey, I saw something cool. Come over. This is the sort of energy that I am bringing to some events that I'm hosting soon. And it's an invitation to kind of reignite this inner child in us, specifically with our grief. And so the first is an in-person event if you're here in Seoul, in Korea. Specifically, it's a grief ritual, but it's a playful, whimsical, lighthearted grief ritual centered around the air element that I am co-facilitating with my friend Mallory. And she'll be guiding us through some kind of low pressure poetry exercises that are designed to kind of ignite your curiosity, your imagination, right? And it's going to include bubbles and kind of playful games. And I'm really excited to, I was describing it to people the other day. And I was like, you should come to the grief ritual. It's going to be really fun. And they were like, fun? It's a grief ritual. And I was like, no, really. This is going to be a fun grief ritual. And then the other is this new event I just announced called Fibers of Grief, which isn't specifically about playfulness, but it is about creating. It's about fiber arts, knitting, sewing, crocheting, those sorts of things as a way to work with our grief. And I feel like And this similar when I talk about dancing, how that could be approached with like some somber reverence, or it could be approached playfully. That can be applied to any sort of art form, right? And so when we think about the fiber arts, the same applies. I can approach it with some somberness, or I can approach it with like, ooh, I got some cool colors, I got some fun fabrics. Let's see what I can make with it, while keeping that grief friend by your side, doing it with you. Like, what can we make together? Let's see what comes up. So that's what we're doing in those two events that are coming up. The grief ritual, the poetic, playful grief ritual, is on September 7th in Seoul, like I mentioned. The Fibers of Grief event is online on Zoom, and it is going to be monthly, recurring the first Thursday of every month. So we start September 5th. No, September 5th for me. We start September 4th if you're in North America, and it'll be September 5th in the morning here for me in Korea. So if you're in this side of the world, it'll be Friday morning. And you can find the sign up for the ritual at ritual.hafizdeathcare.com, and the sign up for the Fibers of Grief event at fibers.hafizdeathcare.com. And I'll link those below as well. Yeah, so that's all I have for you today. I really do hope that you take the time to close your eyes and visualize, imagine your grief as a friend, a child inviting you out to play, and see where they lead you. That's all for today. If you liked this short format episode and would like more of them, please send me a comment or a message. Let me know. A voice note if you'd like. Yeah, I want to know what sort of things you want to hear on this podcast, and how I can best serve who's listening to this. I'd love for this to be a conversation between us. So that's all. Thank you so much for listening. And please go play with your grief.